My name is Ellie Snyder, and I'm doing my presentation on The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. The Yellow Wallpaper is a story about a husband and wife who move into an estate to aid in the wife's depression. The husband, John, who is a doctor, believes she is just depressed, but the woman thinks something bigger is wrong with her. She ends up staying in the old nursery of the house, which is covered in yellow wallpaper. The woman has a very active imagination and first is very appalled by the wallpaper. The story is written as the woman's secret diary. She describes how for her treatment, John does not think she should be involved in any physical activity or really any interaction with the outside world, so she ends up staying in the room the majority of the time. She often mentions that John does not like her to write because it encourages her active imagination. She feels as though writing and physical activity would do her good, but he never listens to her opinions on her treatment. She starts to become fonder of the room, studying the wallpaper in more detail. When she mentions her theories about the wallpaper to John, he tells her to use her self-control and not to let her silly fancies run away with her. She becomes fixated on the wallpaper, and John refuses to change it because he does not want to give in to her silly fancies. As she studies the wallpaper, patterns become more clear to her. She believes she sees bars, and the wallpaper becomes a prison cell, which houses a woman who tries to escape the wallpaper at night. The woman begins to imagine the woman behind the wallpaper creeping around in the yard when she is able to actually escape the wallpaper. John mistakes her obsession with the wallpaper as an improvement of her condition, when really it's the opposite. Finally, the woman decides to destroy the wallpaper forever, and one day she locks herself in the room and begins to tear down all the wallpaper that she can reach. Finally, when her husband gets back in the room, she says to him, "I've got out and last, in spite of you and Jane, and I've pulled off most of the paper so you can't put me back." This final statement shows that the woman, who we can now identify as Jane, has clearly lost her mind and now believes she is the lady behind the wallpaper. The story ends with her viewing herself externally, almost as if she is not herself anymore. The narrator of the story is also the main or major character of the story. She would be considered the protagonist of the story. She is a dynamic character because we see her change throughout the story. We first see her as a woman who seems fairly normal, but her husband does not allow her to do the things that she wants to do or let her active imagination roam, because he views it as neurotic and crazy. As her secret journal progresses, we get an inside look on her mental breakdown. She becomes fixated on the wallpaper, which then makes her less in touch with the reality around her. Her secret diary and her fixation on the wallpaper allow her to escape the feelings she has about the outside world. Finally, her fixation and fascination with the wallpaper turn into a full-on obsession, and her active imagination takes off. She sees a woman stuck behind the wallpaper who is forced to creep around and is captured, not allowed to do what she wants. She sees the woman needs to be rescued. The narrator makes her final break from reality when she says, "I've got out at last, in spite of you and Jane." She finally breaks free from her captivity in the real world, basically by going insane. Through all of this, we see a progression of the character and the changes that the character has made. John, the husband, would be considered a flat character. Nothing really changes about him throughout the story. We don't see a drastic difference between him in the beginning to him in the end. He would be the antagonist of the story. He is the opposition to the protagonist. He basically forces his wife to lose her mind with his treatment for her depression. It's not that he doesn't love his wife, because she states he treats her kindly, but he never listened to her needs or her desires for fixing herself. His inability to understand his wife and know her on more than a superficial level ultimately leads to her insanity. That's how the characters in The Yellow Wallpaper make the story work together.